Robert Stevens stood frozen in the doorway of Le Petit Café, his perfectly polished Oxford shoes refusing to carry him any further. Through the window he could see her, Sarah. After 8 years she looked different, yet exactly the same. Her honey blonde hair was shorter now, falling just above her shoulders instead of cascading down her back like he remembered. She sat at a corner table, her head tilted down toward a young girl with the same colored hair, both of them laughing over what appeared to be hot chocolate topped with excessive whipped cream. Something twisted in his chest as he watched them together. The girl couldn't have been more than 7 years old. The math didn't add up, and yet, there was something in the way she wrinkled her nose when she laughed, just like Sarah always had. "Sir, are you coming in or out?" A waiter's voice snapped him back to reality. Robert mumbled an apology and stepped inside, the familiar scent of coffee and freshly baked croissants hitting him with unexpected force. This had been their place, back when they were young and in love, before his family's expectations and his own rigid ambitions had torn them apart. He found himself walking toward their table, his feet moving of their own accord. Sarah looked up and the smile froze on her face. "Robert?" The word came out barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken conversations. "Hi, Sarah." His voice sounded strange to his own ears. The little girl looked up at him curiously, a smudge of whipped cream on her chin. I didn't expect to see you in Boston." "We moved back last month," Sarah replied, her hand instinctively moving to rest on her daughter's shoulder. "Emma, sweetie, this is an old friend of Mommy's." Emma gave him a bright smile that made his heart stutter. "Hi. Do you want to see my drawing? I'm making it for my art class." She held up a colorful piece of paper covered in what looked like butterflies. "Emma," Sarah interrupted gently, "why don't you go wash your hands? You've got chocolate all over them." As Emma skipped toward the restroom, Robert sank into an empty chair, uninvited. "Sarah, I need to ask." "Don't." Her voice was firm, but her hands trembled slightly as she wrapped them around her coffee cup. "Whatever you're thinking, just don't." "She's 7, isn't she?" The words came out before he could stop them. Sarah met his gaze steadily, and in her eyes, he saw the same strength that had drawn him to her 15 years ago, when they were just 2 college kids sharing coffee and dreams. "Yes, she's 7. And she's happy, Robert. We're happy." The implications of her words hit him like a physical blow. 7 years ago, he had walked away from their marriage because Sarah couldn't give him the family he thought he needed, the heir his father had demanded. He had believed the doctors who said she could never conceive, had chosen his family's legacy over their love. And now, Emma returned, sliding back into her seat with clean hands and a fresh smile. "Mom, can we get another hot chocolate?" As Sarah signaled the waiter, Robert watched them together, seeing all the little gestures and expressions they shared. His world, so carefully built on pride and appearances, began to crumble around the edges. What else had he been wrong about? What else had he thrown away? Later that evening, Robert sat in his penthouse office at the Stevens Tower, Manhattan's newest architectural marvel, but his mind was still in that small Boston cafe. The city lights sparkled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, but he barely noticed them. Instead, he found himself staring at the wedding band he still kept in his desk drawer, a reminder of what he'd once considered his greatest failure. The memory hit him with unexpected clarity, Sarah in their kitchen 8 years ago, tears streaming down her face as she gripped the latest medical report. "There are other options, Robert. We could adopt, we could try surrogacy." But he had already been pulling away, his father's words echoing in his head. The Stevens name needs a true heir, son. Not some stranger's child. His phone buzzed, interrupting his thoughts. It was Jessica, his current girlfriend, confirming their dinner plans at Le Bernardin. He texted back a quick cancellation, ignoring her immediate response. The thought of sitting through another perfectly orchestrated evening discussing merger strategies and social appearances made him feel suddenly hollow. Instead, he opened his laptop and typed Sarah's name into the search bar. Her professional website appeared first, Sarah Mitchell, children's book illustrator. The success of her work was evident from the glowing reviews and prestigious awards listed. She had built a beautiful life without him while he had built, what? A bigger office? A longer list of acquisitions? His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Stevens, your father is here." Robert straightened his tie, slipping back into the role of the dutiful son and CEO. William Stevens entered with his usual commanding presence, but tonight Robert noticed how his father's hair had grown whiter, how his shoulders seemed slightly more stooped. "The Morgan contract is ready for signing," William announced without preamble. "You'll need to fly to Chicago tomorrow morning." "I can't," Robert replied, surprising himself. I have something I need to look into in Boston. William's eyebrows rose. Boston? What could be more important than closing this deal? Robert met his father's gaze, feeling something shift inside him. Dad, do you remember when you told me that leaving Sarah was the right thing to do? That we needed a proper heir for the family legacy? Ancient history, William waved his hand dismissively. You made the right choice. Look at everything you've accomplished. Did I? Robert's voice was quiet. Because today I saw Sarah with a little girl. A 7-year-old little girl. The color drained from William's face. That's impossible. The doctors said. Apparently they were wrong. Robert stood up, walking to the window. Or maybe they weren't. Maybe she adopted, or maybe... He turned back to his father. The point is, she has a daughter. A beautiful, bright little girl who looks just like her. And I walked away because we believed it was impossible. Son, whatever you're thinking. I'm thinking that I've spent 8 years chasing what you wanted, what you said mattered. Robert's voice grew stronger. I'm thinking that maybe it's time I figured out what actually matters to me. William's jaw tightened. You have responsibilities, Robert? To this company, to our family name? Yes, I do. Robert sat back down at his desk. But maybe I've been fulfilling them the wrong way. He pulled up his calendar and began clearing the next week's appointments. The Morgan contract can wait. I need to make things right first. As his father left the office in stony silence, Robert pulled out his phone again. He scrolled through his contacts until he found one he hadn't used in years. Mark Thompson, Sarah's brother. His finger hovered over the number. It was time to learn the truth, no matter how much it might hurt. Mark Thompson's construction office was nothing like the sleek corporate environments Robert was used to. The walls were covered with blueprints, and the desk was cluttered with coffee-stained paperwork. Mark himself hadn't changed much, still built like a linebacker, with calloused hands and suspicious eyes that now bore into Robert from across the desk. You've got some nerve showing up here, Mark said, leaning back in his chair. 8 years of radio silence, and suddenly you want to talk about my sister? Robert resisted the urge to straighten his tie again, a nervous habit he'd developed in boardrooms. This wasn't a negotiation he could win with corporate tactics. I saw her yesterday, Mark. Her and Emma. Ah. Mark's expression hardened. So that's what this is about. You saw Emma and now you want answers? I need to know. You don't need to know anything, Mark cut him off. You lost that right when you walked out on her. Do you have any idea what that did to Sarah? She was already devastated about the fertility issues and then you just gave up on her. On everything. The words hit Robert like physical blows, but he pressed on. I made a horrible mistake. I know that now. But Emma, she looks so much like Sarah. And the timing? Mark stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. You want to know if she's yours? What? So you can swoop in with your fancy lawyers and demand custody? Try to buy your way back into their lives? No? Robert's vehemence surprised them both. I need to know what I threw away. What I lost because I was too proud, too afraid to stand up to my father. Mark was quiet for a long moment, studying Robert's face. Finally he sighed. 2 weeks after you left, Sarah found out she was pregnant. The doctors called it a miracle pregnancy, said all their previous tests must have been wrong. She tried to contact you, but your father's lawyers blocked every attempt. Said you'd moved on, that you were building a new life. The room seemed to spin around Robert. She tried to tell me? My father knew? Yeah, and he made damn sure you never found out. Mark's voice was bitter. Sarah was heartbroken, but she's stronger than anyone gave her credit for. She built a new life, focused on her art, raised Emma on her own. Well, not entirely on her own. She had me, our parents, real family who stuck by her. Robert sank back in his chair, memories flooding his mind. All those times his father had intercepted his mail personally, claiming it was to protect him from Sarah's attempts to reconcile. The way his old phone had mysteriously malfunctioned, requiring a new number. The sudden transfer to the London office for 6 months. It had all been calculated, deliberate. Does Emma? Robert's voice cracked. Does she ever ask about her father? Mark's expression softened slightly. Sarah told her that her father had to go away before she was born. She's never badmouthed you if that's what you're worried about. That's the kind of person Sarah is. She didn't want Emma growing up with anger or resentment. She's a better person than I am, Robert whispered. Yeah, she is. Mark returned to his desk. So what are you going to do with this information, Robert? Because I swear if you hurt them again, I won't. Robert stood up, his mind racing. But I need to make things right. Not by buying my way back into their lives, but by showing them I've changed. That I can be the man Sarah once believed I was. As he turned to leave, Mark called after him. Robert. Emma has her art class showcase next Saturday. Sarah always takes her to celebrate at Le Petit Café afterward. Just, if you're serious about making things right, maybe start there. Start by seeing them for who they are now, not who you left behind. Robert nodded, unable to speak around the lump in his throat. As he walked to his car, his phone buzzed again. Another message from his father, demanding to know why he'd canceled the Chicago trip. For the first time in his adult life, Robert turned off his phone completely. He had 8 years of mistakes to make up for, and he knew exactly where to begin. If you're enjoying this video and want more content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way you won't miss out on any of the amazing stories we have coming up. Your support really helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you more of what you love. Thank you. Robert spent the next 3 days in a haze of memories and regret. His spacious Boston hotel suite felt suffocating as he pored over Sarah's website, looking at photos of book signings and art exhibitions he should have attended. Each image of Emma, receiving awards at school, painting at an easel, playing in autumn leaves, felt like a dagger to his heart. 7 years of birthdays, first days of school and bedtime stories, all lost because of his pride. The knock on his door startled him out of his thoughts. Jessica stood there, pristinely dressed in designer wear, her expression a mixture of concern and annoyance. Your father sent me to check on you. You haven't answered anyone's calls in days. Come in, Robert said, not moving from his position at the desk. I suppose you should hear this too. Jessica perched carefully on the edge of a chair, studying him. Darling, you're worrying everyone. The Morgan deal? I have a daughter. The words hung in the air between them. A 7-year-old daughter I never knew about because my father made sure I wouldn't find out. Jessica's perfect composure cracked slightly. What? But your ex-wife couldn't? The doctors were wrong. Robert finally looked at her directly. Or maybe they were right about the odds being astronomical, but Sarah beat those odds. And instead of being there for that miracle, I was in London, dating socialites and chasing empty achievements. Robert, Jessica's voice was carefully measured. Whatever happened in the past, you have a life now. Responsibilities. Your father? My father is the reason I missed my daughter's entire life. The force of his words made Jessica flinch. I'm sorry, but I can't. I can't just go back to being the obedient son and CO anymore. Not knowing what I know now. Jessica stood, smoothing her skirt. I see. And where does this leave us? Robert looked at the engagement ring he'd been planning to give her at the charity gala next month. It sat in its box, perfectly selected to match her other jewelry, to demonstrate his status and taste. Just like everything else in his carefully curated life, it felt hollow now. I think we both know this isn't real, Jessica. We look good on paper at parties and boardrooms, but do you actually love me? Or do you love the idea of being Mrs. Stevens, future CEO's wife? Her silence was answer enough. She gathered her purse, pausing at the door. For what it's worth, Robert, I hope you find what you're looking for. But your father won't take this well. After she left, Robert turned back to his laptop. He pulled up his email and began to type. Dear board members, I am writing to tender my temporary resignation as CEO of Stevens International, effective immediately. Personal matters require my full attention, and I cannot in good conscience continue to lead this company while my focus is elsewhere. His finger hovered over the send button. This would throw the company into chaos, enrage his father, and possibly cost him his inheritance. But as he glanced at another photo of Emma, her bright smile so much like Sarah's, he knew it didn't matter. He'd already lost something far more valuable than money or status. Now he had a chance, maybe his last chance, to fix that. He hit send, then opened a new tab. After a moment's hesitation, he typed, Children's Art Supplies Beginner's Guide. If he was going to attend Emma's art showcase, he needed to understand her world. Not to impress anyone or maintain appearances, but because he genuinely wanted to know everything about the daughter he'd never known he had. The next morning he walked into a small art supply store in downtown Boston, feeling completely out of place in his tailored suit. An elderly woman approached him with a kind smile. Can I help you find something? Robert cleared his throat. Yes, I need to learn about children's art. Everything about it. My daughter, she's 7 and she loves to draw and I don't know anything about any of it. The woman's smile widened. Well, you've come to the right place. Let's start with the basics. The elementary school gymnasium had been transformed into a makeshift art gallery, with children's artwork displayed on portable walls and proud parents milling about. Robert stood near the entrance, feeling both overdressed and underprepared despite spending the last week learning about watercolors, acrylics, and the difference between graphite and charcoal pencils. He spotted Emma's display easily. Her name was written in cheerful rainbow letters above a collection of butterfly drawings. Each one showed progression, from simple pencil sketches to more complex watercolor pieces. The latest one featured a monarch butterfly emerging from its chrysalis, the details surprisingly sophisticated for a 7-year-old. She's been obsessed with metamorphosis lately, Sarah's voice came from behind him. Ever since we got caterpillars in science class. Robert turned to face her, noting how she looked both guarded and curious. Mark told you I might come? He did? Sarah crossed her arms. He also told me about your conversation. Sarah, Not here, she cut him off quietly. This is Emma's night. She worked really hard on these pieces. As if on cue, Emma came bounding over wearing a paint-splattered smock over her dress. Mom. Mrs. Henderson said I might win the Creativity Award. She stopped short when she saw Robert. Oh hi. Your mom's friend from the cafe? Robert knelt down to her eye level, something he'd read about in his rushed research on interacting with children. Hi Emma. Your butterflies are amazing. I especially like how you showed this one breaking out of its chrysalis. Emma's eyes lit up. You know about chrysalises? Most people just call them cocoons, but they're different. Butterflies make chrysalises, moths make cocoons. Did you know that? I didn't, Robert replied honestly, fighting back emotion at this first real conversation with his daughter. Could you tell me more about it? Sarah watched as Emma launched into an enthusiastic explanation of butterfly metamorphosis, complete with hand gestures. Robert listened intently, asking thoughtful questions that showed he'd done his homework on both art techniques and Emma's subject matter. Emma, Sarah finally interrupted gently, why don't you go show your grandparents your display? They just arrived. As Emma ran off to greet Sarah's parents, Robert stood up, brushing off his knees. She's incredible, Sarah. So bright and passionate, just like you always were about your art. Why are you here, Robert? Sarah's voice was low, but he could hear the tremor in it. Really? Because I want to know her. Know you again. Not to disrupt your lives or make demands, but because... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Because I've spent 8 years chasing things that don't matter, and I finally understand what does. You can't just walk back into our lives. I know, he interrupted softly. I know I have no right to ask anything of you. But I've stepped down from my position at Stevens International. I'm selling my penthouse in Manhattan. I've ended things with Jessica. For the first time in my adult life, I'm trying to figure out who I am without my father's expectations defining me. Sarah studied him for a long moment. The Robert the first knew in college talked about making his own path. About building something meaningful, not just profitable. What happened to him? He got lost somewhere between his father's approval and his own cowardice, Robert admitted. But seeing Emma learning about what I threw away, I want to find that person again. The one you used to believe in. Before Sarah could respond, Emma returned, clutching a blue ribbon. I won. I won the Creativity Award. She threw her arms around Sarah, then to everyone's surprise, hugged Robert's legs too. Thank you for liking my butterflies. Robert froze for a moment, then carefully patted her shoulder, looking at Sarah with a mix of joy and uncertainty. Sarah's expression softened slightly. Emma, sweetie, would you like to get ice cream to celebrate? Can your friend come too? Emma asked hopefully. He knows about art stuff? Sarah hesitated, then nodded slowly. If he'd like to. I would, Robert said quietly. Very much. As they walked toward the parking lot, Emma skipping ahead with her ribbon, Sarah spoke without looking at him. This doesn't mean everything's forgiven. Or forgotten. I know. But, she continued, Emma deserves to know where she comes from. Who she comes from. If you're serious about being in her life, it has to be for her, not for your guilt or your father's legacy. I understand. Robert watched Emma examining a real butterfly that had landed on a nearby bush. Thank you for giving me a chance to try. William Stevens burst into Robert's temporary Boston apartment unannounced, waving a tablet displaying the morning's Wall Street Journal headline. Stevens International CEO takes sudden leave of absence, stock prices waver. Have you completely lost your mind? William's face was flushed with anger. The board is in chaos, our investors are panicking, and you're here playing house with your ex-wife and a child who... My daughter, Robert cut him off, his voice steady. Emma is my daughter. The daughter you knew about and deliberately kept from me for 7 years? William faltered for a moment, then straightened his shoulders. I did what was necessary to protect you, to protect our company's future. Sarah wasn't right for you or for the Stevens name. She would have held you back from what, Dad? From being miserable? From spending 8 years chasing your dreams instead of my own? Robert gestured around the modest but comfortable apartment. Look around. For the first time since college, I'm actually thinking for myself. Making my own choices. By throwing away everything we've built? Everything I've sacrificed for? You mean everything you sacrificed me for? Robert's words hit with precision. Did you ever ask what I wanted? Or were you too busy planning my life to notice I was dying inside? A knock at the door interrupted their confrontation. Sarah stood there, Emma half hidden behind her legs. Sorry we're early for, she stopped, seeing William. Oh, hello, Mr. Stevens. Emma peered around her mother, eyes wide with curiosity. William stared at her, the color draining from his face. The resemblance to a young Sarah was striking, but there was something unmistakably Stevens in her chin, in the way she held herself. Emma, Sarah said quietly, why don't we come back later? No, Robert said firmly. Please stay. Dad was just leaving. William looked between them, his son standing tall and unflinching, Sarah protective and wary, and Emma, the granddaughter he'd denied knowing. For the first time in Robert's memory, his father seemed at a loss for words. She likes art, Robert continued, his voice softening. She won a creativity award at her school showcase. She knows the difference between chrysalises and cocoons, and she can explain metamorphosis better than any biology teacher. She's brilliant, Dad. And I've missed everything because you decided your legacy was more important than my happiness. I never meant to. William started, then stopped, looking older than Robert had ever seen him. I thought I was protecting our family's future. This is our family's future. Robert gestured to Emma, who was now examining a butterfly sculpture he'd bought for his coffee table. And I won't miss any more of it. William moved toward the door, pausing beside Sarah. I apologize, he said stiffly. For everything. After he left, Sarah let out a breath she seemed to have been holding. That was long overdue, Robert finished. He turned to Emma with a gentle smile. Hey, butterfly expert, want to see something cool? I found this book about Art Nouveau butterfly designs I thought you might like. As Emma eagerly followed Robert to his bookshelf, Sarah watched them together. The wall she'd built around her heart over 8 years of single parenthood cracked just a little, seeing the natural way they connected over shared interests. Mom, look, Emma called out. These butterflies are made of stained glass. Can we try making that? Sarah laughed. Maybe we should master watercolors first, sweetie? Actually, Robert said hesitantly, I know someone who teaches stained glass workshops. If it's okay with your mom, maybe we could all go together? Learn something new? The hope in his voice was painful in its sincerity. Sarah found herself nodding, surprised by her own response. We could do that. As long as you understand we're taking things slow. Slow is good, Robert agreed, watching Emma trace the butterfly patterns with careful fingers. Slow means I have time to get things right this time. If you're enjoying this video and want more content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way you won't miss out on any of the amazing stories we have coming up. Your support really helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you more of what you love. Thank you. The stained glass workshop was housed in an old converted warehouse in Cambridge, sunlight streaming through dozens of completed pieces hanging in the windows. Emma pressed her face against the glass, eyes wide with wonder at the rainbow patterns dancing across the floor. My friend Diana teaches here, Robert explained as they walked in. She's been doing stained glass for 20 years? Sarah raised an eyebrow. I didn't know you had artistic friends. There's a lot you don't know about who I've become, Robert replied quietly. Just like there's a lot I need to learn about who you and Emma are now. Diana turned out to be a gray-haired woman with paint-stained hands and infectious enthusiasm. She set them up at a workbench with simple patterns and basic tools, taking extra time to explain safety precautions to Emma. Remember, Diana instructed, glass can be beautiful, but it needs to be handled with respect and care. She glanced meaningfully at Robert, who understood she wasn't just talking about the materials. They started with small sun catchers, Emma choosing a butterfly pattern while Sarah selected a crescent moon. Robert opted for a simple star, watching carefully as Diana demonstrated how to score and break the glass. Like this? Emma asked, tentatively pressing the cutting tool against her piece of blue glass. Gentle but firm, Robert suggested, remembering Diana's instructions. Like when you're using your watercolors, you need to be confident but careful. Sarah looked up, surprised by his insight into their daughter's art. She'd noticed the art books accumulating in his apartment but hadn't realized how much attention he'd been paying to Emma's techniques. As they worked, Emma chattered about school, her friends, and her upcoming science project about, unsurprisingly, butterflies. Robert absorbed every detail, asking questions that showed genuine interest rather than mere politeness. "Katie in my class says monarch butterflies can fly thousands of miles," Emma explained while carefully arranging glass pieces. "Is that true?" "It is," Sarah confirmed. "They migrate to Mexico every year. Like you used to migrate to the coffee shop to study in college," Robert said without thinking. "Remember? You said you couldn't concentrate unless you were surrounded by people and the smell of espresso." The memory hung between them, unexpected and bittersweet. Sarah's hands stilled on her project. "You remember that?" "I remember everything about those days," Robert admitted. "I just forgot to remember them for a while. Got too caught up in being who I thought I had to be." Emma looked between them curiously. "Did you meet at a coffee shop?" "We did," Sarah said after a moment. "Le Petit Café, where we saw Robert that day. It used to be our favorite place to study." "Is that why we always go there after my art class?" Emma asked innocently, causing both adults to freeze momentarily. Diana swooped in with perfect timing. "Emma, would you like to see how we're going to add copper foil to the edges? It's like giving your butterfly a special frame." As Emma followed Diana to the supply table, Sarah spoke softly. "I did keep going there because of the memories. Silly, right? Even after everything?" "Not silly," Robert replied, carefully placing a piece of amber glass into his star pattern. "I kept the corner office at Stevens Tower because it had a view of the park where you used to sketch on Sunday afternoons. We both held on to pieces of the past, just different pieces." They worked in companionable silence for a while, the quiet broken only by Emma's excited observations and Diana's gentle instructions. When they finally finished their pieces, Diana helped them hold them up to the light. Emma's butterfly was slightly uneven but full of vibrant blues and purples. Sarah's moon captured the silvery essence of moonlight perfectly. Robert's star was simple but carefully constructed, each point precisely cut and fitted. "They're all different," Emma observed, "but they look nice together." Robert and Sarah exchanged a glance, understanding the unintended metaphor in their daughter's words. Different pieces of a family broken apart but perhaps, with enough care and patience, capable of creating something new and beautiful together. "Should we get ice cream?" Robert suggested hesitantly. "To celebrate our first art project together? Can we, Mom?" Emma bounced on her toes. "Please?" Sarah looked at her daughter's hopeful face, then at Robert's carefully neutral expression. "Ice cream sounds good. But Robert, you should know that Emma has very strong opinions about proper Sunday construction." "I want to learn all about it," he replied seriously, making Emma giggle. As they left the workshop, Diana smiled knowingly at their retreating forms. Sometimes, she thought, the most beautiful works of art were the ones that required the most delicate and patient reconstruction. Robert was having breakfast with Emma at their now regular Sunday morning diner when his phone buzzed with an incoming video call from the board of directors. He silenced it, focusing instead on Emma's elaborate explanation of why pancakes were superior to waffles. "But waffles have little squares to hold the syrup," he argued playfully, making Emma roll her eyes in a gesture so reminiscent of Sarah that it made his heart ache. "That's exactly why they're worse. The syrup should mix with the butter naturally, not be trapped in little boxes." She demonstrated by swirling her fork through the puddle of syrup on her plate. "See? Freedom?" His phone buzzed again. Then again. Finally, a text from his father: "The Morgan deal is falling apart. They're threatening to walk. Answer your damn phone." "Is everything okay?" Emma asked, noticing his frown. Robert set the phone face down. "Just work stuff. Nothing more important than pancake philosophy." But when Sarah came to pick up Emma an hour later, she immediately sensed his tension. "What's wrong?" "The Morgan merger. It's a deal I've been working on for months. Apparently, it's collapsing because I'm not there to handle it personally." He ran a hand through his hair. "The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss my temporary leave of absence." Sarah studied him carefully. "Sounds like something the old Robert would consider a crisis." "The old Robert would already be on a plane to Chicago," he admitted. "But Emma asked if I could come to her science fair on Tuesday. She wants to show me her butterfly life cycle project." "You could reschedule," Sarah suggested, though her tone was neutral. "She'd understand." Robert thought about the way Emma's face had lit up when he'd promised to come, how she'd immediately launched into a preview of her presentation. No, I couldn't. Not again. Not to her. Later that evening he sat in his apartment, laptop open to a scathing email from the board. The merger represented millions in potential revenue, hundreds of jobs, years of negotiation. His father had called twice more, each message more urgent than the last. His phone rang again, but this time it was Mark Thompson. Heard you're having some corporate drama, Mark said without preamble. News travels fast. Small business community talks. Big business too, apparently. Word is you're throwing away the deal of the decade to attend a grade school science fair. Robert tensed. If you're calling to tell me I'm making another mistake? Actually, Mark interrupted, I'm calling to tell you I know a guy. James Morgan Jr. We worked some construction projects together back in the day, before he took over his dad's company. Real down-to-earth guy, nothing like the corporate sharks you usually deal with. Robert sat up straighter. You know James Morgan? Yeah, and he's more likely to respect a guy choosing his kid's science fair over a merger than one who'd do the opposite. Just saying. The next morning, Robert walked into the board meeting 10 minutes late, carrying coffee and a small box. The board members, his father and James Morgan Jr. all looked up in surprise. Sorry for my tardiness, Robert said calmly. I was picking these up from a little cafe I used to frequent. He opened the box, revealing Le Petit Café's famous croissants. They're still the best in Boston, Mr. Morgan. I remembered you mentioned living here during college. Thought you might have tried them. James Morgan's face broke into a smile. Le Petit Café? My wife and I had our first date there. They still make that almond one with the honey glaze? 2 in the box, actually. Robert sat down, notably not at the head of the table where his father waited. I thought we might discuss how to restructure this deal to benefit both our companies while I tell you about my daughter's upcoming science fair project. She's 7, brilliant, and has taught me more about butterfly metamorphosis than I ever learned in business school. The tension in the room shifted subtly. James Morgan leaned forward, genuine interest replacing corporate diplomacy. My youngest is 8, actually. Never stops talking about dinosaurs. How do you balance it all? Honestly? Robert glanced at his father, then back to James. I'm learning that some things aren't about balance. Some things are about choices. And I'm choosing to be a father first, CO second. If that's going to be a problem for this merger? Actually, James interrupted with a grin, it makes me a lot more interested in working with Stevens International. Assuming you're still planning to return to your position eventually? I am, Robert confirmed. But I have a science fair to attend first. And I was hoping we might discuss moving some of our operations to Boston. I hear it's a great city for both business and butterflies. Emma's science fair was a triumph. Her butterfly display, complete with actual chrysalises carefully monitored in a mesh habitat, won first place. But it was the aftermath that changed everything. Can we celebrate at Le Petit Café? Emma asked as they left the school, her blue ribbon pinned proudly to her dress. All of us. Sarah and Robert exchanged glances. They'd been carefully orchestrating separate time with Emma, avoiding too much overlap that might confuse or complicate things. But looking at their daughter's hopeful face, neither could find a reason to say no. The cafe was quiet in the late afternoon. They sat at what used to be their table, now with Emma between them. As she happily devoured a hot chocolate with extra whipped cream, Sarah noticed Robert watching them with an odd expression. What is it? She asked softly. I just realized, this is the first time we've sat here together. He trailed off, unsure how to finish that sentence. As a family, Emma supplied innocently, chocolate mustache on her upper lip. Like Katie's family. Her parents were divorced but now they're married again and she has a baby brother. Both adults froze. Sarah recovered first. Emma, sweetie, it's not quite the same. Why not? Emma's question was genuine, curious. You loved each other before, right? And now Daddy's trying really hard to make things better. He learned about art and butterflies and he comes to all my important things and he makes you smile sometimes when you think I'm not looking. Robert's coffee cup clattered against its saucer. It was the first time Emma had called him Daddy instead of Robert. Sarah's eyes glistened with unshed tears. It's more complicated than that, honey, Sarah began, but Emma wasn't finished. I heard you telling Aunt Jenny that he's different now. That he's more like the person you fell in love with in college. And I heard Daddy tell Uncle Mark that leaving you was the biggest mistake of his life and he'd spend forever making up for it if you'd let him. She took another sip of hot chocolate. I'm 7, not stupid. I notice things. A waiter appeared with a plate of croissants, almond with honey glaze, Sarah's favorite. She looked at Robert questioningly. I might have called ahead, he admitted. Some memories are worth preserving. After Emma went to the restroom to wash the chocolate from her hands, Sarah turned to Robert. She's right, you know. About some things. You are more like the person I knew in college. The one who cared more about making a difference than making money. I had to lose everything to remember who I wanted to be, Robert replied. Who I was when I was with you. He hesitated, then pulled out his phone, showing her an email. The Morgan merger went through. We're moving the headquarters to Boston. I'll be back as CEO, but on my terms this time. No more London offices or Miss Science fairs. Sarah's breath caught. You're staying in Boston? If that's okay. Not to pressure you or Emma, just to be here. To be present. To keep trying to deserve the second chance you've given me. And your father? Robert smiled slightly. He's learning. Slowly. But watching Emma win today, seeing her eyes light up when she talks about her passions. I think he's starting to understand what he helped me throw away. What really matters. Emma returned, squeezing between them in the booth instead of sitting across. She leaned her head against Sarah's arm, feet swinging beneath the table. Can we get another hot chocolate? I think one sugar rush is enough for today, Sarah laughed, running a hand through Emma's hair. Worth a try, Emma shrugged, then looked up at Robert. Will you help me with my next art project? I want to make a butterfly mosaic, like the stained glass but with tiny pieces of colored paper. I'd love to, Robert replied, his voice rough with emotion. Though you might have to teach me your paper cutting techniques. As Emma launched into a detailed explanation of her vision for the project, Sarah found herself watching Robert. He was focused entirely on their daughter, asking questions, making suggestions, completely present in a way the old Robert never could have been. The wall around her heart cracked a little more. Later, as they walked Emma to Sarah's car, their daughter half asleep between them, Sarah made a decision. Would you like to come over for dinner tomorrow? Emma's been asking to show you her complete butterfly book collection. The hope in Robert's eyes was almost painful to see. I'd like that very much. Just dinner, Sarah clarified. Small steps. Small steps, he agreed. But in the right direction this time. Sarah's house was exactly what Robert would have expected. A cozy Victorian in Cambridge with a wraparound porch and a garden that seemed to attract actual butterflies. The walls inside were covered with a mix of Emma's artwork and Sarah's illustrations, telling the story of their life together through colors and shapes. This is from when I was 5, Emma explained, leading him through a gallery of her progressive work. Mom keeps everything I make. She says art is like a diary, it shows who you were and who you're becoming. Robert stopped at a framed illustration. One of Sarah's professional pieces. It showed a little girl releasing butterflies into the sky, her face turned away but her posture full of hope. The book it was from sat on a nearby shelf, Learning to Fly, a story about new beginnings. That was my first children's book, Sarah said quietly, coming up behind them. I wrote it the year after Emma was born. The dedication page read, For E, who taught me that sometimes the most beautiful things come from unexpected changes. Dinner's ready, Sarah announced, steering them toward the dining room. Emma insisted on breakfast for dinner. Apparently, morning pancakes with Robert have made quite an impression. Freedom pancakes, Emma declared, making both adults laugh at their private joke about syrup distribution. The domesticity of the scene was both wonderful and painful. Setting the table together, Emma showing Robert where everything went, Sarah bringing out plates of perfectly crafted pancakes. It was everything Robert had thrown away, everything he'd convinced himself he didn't need. Mom makes faces in the pancakes, Emma explained as they sat down. Look, this one has a butterfly. Of course it does, Robert smiled, but his voice was thick with emotion. Halfway through dinner, Emma gasped suddenly. I forgot to show you my special butterfly book. Can I go get it? After she raced upstairs, Sarah turned to Robert. You okay? You seem overwhelmed. I am, he admitted. This house, this dinner, Emma's art everywhere. It's the life we could have had all along. The life I was too blind to see I wanted. Robert? I know. Small steps. He took a shaky breath. It's just, seeing all the memories I missed right there on the walls. 7 years of artwork. 7 years of pancake breakfasts and bedtime stories and... He stopped, collecting himself. I keep thinking about what my father said about protecting the Stevens legacy. But Emma is our legacy, Sarah. And she's more amazing than any company or fortune. Sarah was quiet for a moment, then said, You know, the day I found out I was pregnant after you left, I almost tried to contact you again. Mark told me you did try. That my father's lawyers blocked you. No, I mean after that. When Emma was born. But then I looked at her, so tiny and perfect, and I thought about how you'd walked away when things got hard. How you'd chosen your father's approval over our marriage. And I decided she deserved better than a father who had to be convinced to love her. The words hit Robert like physical blows, but he knew he deserved them. You were right. I didn't deserve her then. I'm not sure I deserve her now. But I swear, Sarah, I'm trying to become someone who does. I know you are. Sarah's voice softened. That's why we're here having dinner. Because for the first time since college, I'm seeing the man who used to dream about making the world better, not just richer. The man who would have chosen love over legacy. Emma's footsteps thundered back down the stairs before Robert could respond. She carried a large scrapbook, well-worn and obviously well-loved. Look. She placed it between them, opening to the first page. Mom helped me press real butterflies in here. And she wrote down all their scientific names and facts about them. As they looked through the book together, Robert noticed dates and little notes in Sarah's handwriting marking Emma's discoveries and observations. It was more than a scientific record. It was a chronicle of their daughter's passion, carefully preserved by a mother's love. Maybe, Sarah said hesitantly, watching Robert absorb every detail Emma shared, maybe you could add some notes too. For the new butterflies we find. The significance of the offer, to contribute to this precious record of Emma's life, wasn't lost on Robert. I'd be honored, he said softly. Though I might need some coaching on proper scientific notation. I can teach you. Emma volunteered eagerly. I'm really good at the Latin names. Did you know monarch butterflies are actually called Danaus plexippus? As Emma launched into another enthusiastic explanation, Robert caught Sarah's eye across the table. The walls around her heart might still be standing, but now they had windows, small openings letting in light and hope, the possibility of something new taking flight. William Stevens stood awkwardly on Sarah's porch, holding a large, wrapped package and looking utterly out of place in his bespoke suit. When Sarah opened the door, both of them seemed equally surprised to be facing each other. Is Robert here? William asked stiffly. He's in the backyard with Emma. They're planning a butterfly garden. Sarah hesitated, then stepped aside. Would you like to come in? William followed her through the house, his eyes taking in the artwork, the family photos, the evidence of a happy childhood he'd helped deny his granddaughter. They found Robert and Emma sitting cross-legged on the grass, surrounded by gardening books and seed packets. Dad? Robert stood quickly, instinctively moving closer to Emma. What are you doing here? William cleared his throat. I found this in storage. At the summer house. He held out the package to Emma. I thought you might like to have it. Emma looked to both her parents for permission before accepting the gift. As she unwrapped it, Sarah gasped softly. It was a butterfly specimen collection, professionally mounted and preserved in a beautiful wooden case. It was your grandmother's, William explained to Robert. Your mother loved butterflies too. She used to collect them before? He trailed off, emotion crossing his usually stoic face. Well before she passed. Robert stared at his father. In the 25 years since his mother's death, William had rarely spoken of her. The butterfly collection had disappeared along with most other reminders of her. It's beautiful, Emma breathed, carefully examining each specimen. Look, Mom, they have all the scientific names. Your father told me about your science fair project, William continued awkwardly. And your art. You remind me of her. She would have? He stopped again, composing himself. She would have loved you very much. Sarah touched the glass gently. I remember this collection. It was in your study when Robert and I first started dating. You took it down right after we got engaged. Yes. William's voice was rough. It hurt too much to look at. Eleanor, your grandmother. She always said butterflies reminded her that beautiful things don't last forever. That you have to appreciate them while they're here. He looked at Robert meaningfully. I forgot that lesson when she died. Focused on building things that would last instead of appreciating the beautiful moments we had. Dad. Robert started, but William held up a hand. Let me finish. I pushed you to do the same thing, Robert. To choose permanence over beauty, legacy over love. I made you repeat my mistakes because I couldn't face my own grief. He turned to Sarah. And I kept a grandfather from his granddaughter because I was afraid of loving someone who might leave like Eleanor did. I'm so sorry. Emma, who had been quietly absorbing this adult conversation, suddenly wrapped her arms around William's waist. The old man stiffened in surprise, then slowly, cautiously, placed a hand on her shoulder. Don't be sad, Emma said. Mom says it's never too late to make things right. That's why she let Daddy come back, because people can change if they really want to. Sarah and Robert exchanged a look over their daughter's head, part surprise, part understanding, part something deeper neither was ready to name. "She's wise, your daughter," William said softly. "Wiser than I've been." He looked around the garden. "You know, the estate has extensive grounds. Perfect for a butterfly sanctuary, if you're interested in expanding your garden plans." "Really?" Emma's eyes lit up. "Could we plant milkweed for the monarchs? And passion fruit vines for the fritillaries?" "I think," William said carefully looking at Robert and Sarah, "that would be up to your parents. But the grounds are there if they'd like to visit. All of you." Robert watched his father, the great William Stevens, terror of Wall Street, being thoroughly charmed by a 7-year-old's enthusiasm for lepidopterology. The man who had orchestrated multinational mergers was taking notes on butterfly-friendly plants with complete seriousness. "Small steps," Sarah murmured, echoing their ongoing mantra. But she was smiling as Emma showed William her plans for the garden, pointing out optimal sunlight positions and nectar flower arrangements. "Small steps," Robert agreed, then added quietly, "but maybe we could look at those grounds next weekend? As a family?" Sarah's hand found his, squeezing briefly before letting go. "I think Emma would like that. And maybe it's time for some bigger steps." 1 year later, the butterfly garden at the Stevens estate had transformed into something magical. Monarchs danced between carefully cultivated flowers, while Emma darted after them with her camera, documenting each species for her ever-growing collection. Sarah sat at a wrought iron table, sketching ideas for her newest children's book, while William explained the finer points of butterfly hospitality to a group of visiting elementary school students, a monthly event that had become surprisingly popular. Robert watched them all from the garden path, still sometimes struck by how much his life had changed in a year. Stevens International's Boston headquarters was thriving, with a new focus on sustainable development that would have seemed impossible in his old life. His father had become the company's most enthusiastic advocate for environmental initiatives, especially those involving butterfly habitats. But more importantly, he had found his way back to himself, and to his family. "Daddy?" Emma called out, running over with her camera. "Look, I got a picture of a question mark butterfly. See how the wings have that punctuation mark pattern?" "Beautiful," Robert agreed, examining the photo. "Perfect for your presentation next week." Emma had been chosen to speak at a children's science symposium about butterfly conservation. The little girl who once did a simple science fair project was becoming a passionate advocate for environmental preservation, inspiring other kids with her enthusiasm. "Mom's helping me practice my speech," Emma said, then lowered her voice conspiratorially. "And I think Grandpa's more nervous about it than I am. He keeps making me note cards." Robert laughed, watching his father gesture animatedly to the school group about proper milkweed cultivation. William Stevens, once focused solely on profit margins, now spent his weekends teaching children about ecosystem preservation. Sarah approached them, her sketchbook tucked under her arm. "Emma, honey, why don't you go help Grandpa with his tour? I think he's getting to the part about chrysalis formation, and you explain that better than anyone." As Emma skipped off, Sarah turned to Robert. "The publisher loves the new book concept. A grandfather and granddaughter creating a butterfly sanctuary together? They said it's exactly what they're looking for. Art imitating life?" Robert smiled. "Something like that." Sarah's hand found his, their fingers intertwining naturally. Over the past year, these small touches had become more frequent, more comfortable. The walls around her heart had slowly dissolved, replaced by something stronger, trust, rebuilt piece by piece. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" Robert asked softly. "If I had been braver back then, if I had stood up to my father sooner?" "Sometimes," Sarah admitted. "But then I look at who we are now. Who you've become. Who your father has become. Even who I've become." She gestured to the garden, to Emma teaching the younger children about butterfly wings. "Maybe we all needed our own time to grow, to change. Like a metamorphosis?" Robert finished, pulling her closer. "Exactly." Sarah leaned into him, watching their daughter shine. "You know, Emma asked me something interesting this morning. She wanted to know if we were finally going to have our second wedding like Katie's parents did." Robert's heart skipped. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that some things can't be rushed. That they need time to develop naturally." Sarah turned to face him, her eyes soft. "But I also told her that sometimes, when things do develop naturally, they end up more beautiful than you could have imagined." Robert cupped her face gently. "Sarah Mitchell, was that your way of saying you might be ready for more than small steps?" "I'm saying," she smiled, "that I love the man you've become. The father you are to Emma. The son you are to your father. The person you were always meant to be. She reached up, touching his cheek. And yes, I might be ready for that bigger step. If you are. Their kiss was soft, sweet, and witnessed by a dozen fluttering monarchs, nature's own approval of their reunion. From across the garden, they heard Emma's delighted squeal and William's suspiciously emotional cough. Well, Robert said, resting his forehead against Sarah's, I guess we just made Emma's day. Our day, Sarah corrected. All of us. As their family gathered around them, embracing and celebrating, Robert thought about the long journey that had brought them here. Sometimes the most beautiful transformations required the hardest changes, the most painful growth. But in the end, like the butterflies Emma loved so much, they had all emerged stronger, more colorful, and ready to soar. Thank you all for watching this story. If you enjoyed it and want to support the channel, you can now use YouTube's Super Thanks feature. Your support helps us create more content like this and keeps these stories flying your way. Don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming tales of love, redemption, and family. Until next time.